This article is about the alcoholic beverage obtained from wine. For other uses, see brandy, disambiguation. Brandy cognac glass.jpg Cognac brandy. In a typical snifter, brandy is a spirit produced by distilling wine. Brandy generally contains 35 to 60% alcohol by volume, 70 to 120 US proof, and is typically consumed as an after-dinner digestive. Some brandies are aged in wooden casks. Others are colored with caramel coloring to imitate the effect of aging, and some are produced using a combination of both aging and coloring. Varieties of wine brandy can be found across the winemaking world. Among the most renowned are Cognac and Armagnac from southwestern France. In a broader sense, the term brandy also denotes liquors obtained from the distillation of pomace, yielding pomace brandy, or mash or wine of any other fruit brandy. These products are also called eau de vie, which translates to water of life. History. The origins of brandy are tied to the development of distillation. While the process was known in classical times, it was not used for significant beverage production until the 15th century. In the early 16th century, French brandy helped kickstart the triangle trade when it replaced Portuguese fortified wine at the center of the trade due to its higher alcohol content and ease of shipping. Canoemen and guards on the African side of the trade were generally paid in brandy. By the late 17th century, rum had replaced brandy as the exchange alcohol of choice in the triangle trade. Initially, wine was distilled as a preservation method and as a way to make it easier for merchants to transport. It is also thought that wine was originally distilled to lessen the tax which was assessed by volume. The intent was to add the water removed by distillation back to the brandy shortly before consumption. It was discovered that after having been stored in wooden casks, the resulting product had improved over the original distilled spirit. In addition to removing water, the distillation process led to the formation and decomposition of numerous aromatic compounds, fundamentally altering the composition of the distillate from its source. Non-volatile substances such as pigments, sugars, and salts remained behind in the still. As a result, the taste of the distillate was often quite unlike that of the original source. As described in the 1728 edition of Cyclopedia, the following method was used to distill brandy. A cucurbit was filled half full of the liquor from which brandy was to be drawn and then raised with a little fire until about 1/6 part was distilled, or until that which falls into the receiver was entirely flammable. This liquor, distilled only once, was called spirit of wine or brandy. Purified by another distillation, or several more, this was then called spirit of wine rectified. The second distillation was made in Balneo Maria and in a glass cucurbit, and the liquor was distilled to about 1/2 the quantity. This was further rectified as long as the operator thought necessary to produce brandy. To shorten these several distillations, which were long and troublesome, a chemical instrument was invented that reduced them to a single distillation. To test the purity of the rectified spirit of wine, a portion was ignited. If the entire contents were consumed by a fire without leaving any impurities behind, then the liquor was good. Another, better test involved putting a little gunpowder in the bottom of the spirit. If the gunpowder could ignite after the spirit was consumed by fire, then the liquor was good. As most brandies have been distilled from grapes, the regions of the world producing excellent brandies have roughly paralleled those areas producing grapes for viniculture. At the end of the 19th century, the Western European markets, including by extension their overseas empires, were dominated by French and Spanish brandies, and Eastern Europe was dominated by brandies from the Black Sea region, including Bulgaria, the Crimea, and Georgia. In 1884, David Sarajishvili founded his brandy factory in Tbilisi, Georgia, a crossroads for Turkish, Central Asian, and Persian trade routes and a part of the Russian Empire at the time. Except for few major producers, brandy production and consumption tend to have a regional character, and thus production methods significantly vary. Wine brandy is produced from a variety of grape cultivars. A special selection of cultivars, providing distinct aroma and character, is used for high-quality brandies, while cheaper ones are made from whichever wine is available. Brandy is made from so-called base wine, which significantly differs from regular table wines. It is made from early grapes in order to achieve higher acid concentration and lower sugar levels. Base wine generally contains smaller amount, up to 20 mg/L, of sulfur than regular wines, as it creates undesired copper sulfate in reaction with copper in the pot stills. The yeast sediment produced during the fermentation may or may not be kept in the wine, depending on the brandy style. Brandy is distilled from the base wine in 2 phases. In the first, large part of water and solids is removed from the base, obtaining so-called low wine, basically a concentrated wine with 28 to 30% ABV. In the second stage, low wine is distilled into brandy. The liquid exits the pot still in three phases, referred to as the heads, heart, and tails respectively. The first part, the head, has an alcohol concentration of about 83%, 166 US proof, and an unpleasant odor. The weak portion on the end, tail, is discarded along with the head, and they are generally mixed with another batch of low wine, thereby entering the distillation cycle again. The middle heart fraction, richest in aromas and flavors, is preserved for later maturation. Distillation does not simply enhance the alcohol content of wine. The heat under which the product is distilled and the material of the still, usually copper, cause chemical reactions to take place during distillation. This leads to the formation of numerous new volatile aroma components, changes in relative amounts of aroma components in the wine, and the hydrolysis of components such as esters. Brandy is usually produced in pot stills, batch distillation, but the column still can also be used for continuous distillation. Distillate obtained in this manner has a higher alcohol concentration, approximately 90% ABV, and is less aromatic. Choice of the apparatus depends on the style of brandy produced. Cognac and South African brandy are examples of brandy produced in batches, while many American brandies use fractional distillation in column stills. Citation needed. Aging after distillation, the unaged brandy is placed into oak barrels to mature. Usually, brandies with a natural golden or brown color are aged in oak casks, single-barrel aging. Some brandies, particularly those from Spain, are aged using the Solera system, where the producer changes the barrel each year. After a period of aging, which depends on the style, class and legal requirements, the mature brandy is mixed with distilled water to reduce alcohol concentration and bottled. Some brandies have caramel color and sugar added to simulate the appearance of barrel aging. Brandy has a traditional age grading system, although its use is unregulated outside of cognac and armagnac. These indicators can usually be found on the label near the brand name. VS Very Special or 3 stars designates a blend in which the youngest brandy has been stored for at least 2 years in a cask. VSOP Very Superior Old Pale, Reserve or 5 stars designates a blend in which the youngest brandy is stored for at least 4 years in a cask. XO Extra Old or Napoleon designates a blend in which the youngest brandy is stored for at least 6 years. Hors d'âge Beyond Age is a designation which is formally equal to XO for cognac, but for armagnac designates brandy that is at least 10 years old. In practice, the term is used by producers to market a high-quality product beyond the official age scale. In the case of Brandy de Jerez, the Consejo Regulador de la Denominación Brandy de Jerez classifies it according to Brandy de Jerez Solera, 1 year old. Brandy de Jerez Solera Reserva, 3 years old. Brandy de Jerez Solera Gran Reserva, 10 years old. Russian brandies, traditionally called cognac within the country, as well as brandies from many other post-Soviet states, except Armenia, use the traditional Russian grading system that is similar to the French one, but extends it significantly. 3 stars, or designates the brandy with the youngest component cask aged for at least 2 years, analogous to the French VS. 4 stars, or is for the blends where the youngest brandy is aged for at least 3 years. 5 stars, or means that the youngest brandy in the blend was aged 4 years, similar to the French VSOP. Cave per kilovolt aged cognac is a designation corresponding to XO or Napoleon, meaning that the youngest spirit in the blend is at least 6 years old. Kvavark KVVK aged cognac, superior quality, designates the 8-year-old blends and tends to be used only for the highest quality vintages. Ks per kilo Siemens old cognac, at least 10 years of aging for the youngest spirit in the blend, similar to the armagnacs, hors d'âge. OS very old, beyond the French system and designates the blends older than 20 years.